Hey, this is Matt Vojek, and this is the Creating Business Podcast. Each episode, I sit down and talk to a guest from the creative industries of advertising and marketing about work they've done for a business and their thought process behind all their decisions. By digging deep into projects and the decisions made, we unearth new insights and ideas about creating amazing work that moves the needle for businesses. This is the Creating Business Podcast. All right, so the project in question this week is Chinchilla, written by Beth Stafford and illustrated by Jeremy Slagle. So this project, whenever I first saw this, it was actually while it was in development, and even at that point, I knew that this was going to be something special. And one of the things I'm going to talk about at some point in our conversation. I ran into Jeremy as he was illustrating this book, and he was telling me all about it. And like I said, I immediately knew that this was going to be something special, especially something that I'm going to want to read to my kids. Story time is I feel like is a really special time for both me and my kids. If you have kids and you read to them, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a time where they are often quiet and are willing to listen to a story. And I don't know, there's just something about it. And anytime that you're able to tell them stories where it has kind of an underlying meaning to both you or just humankind in general, I think it's a really special thing. And reading the story for the first time to them, and actually, whenever I found out more about it was whenever they launched their Kickstarter, and learning more about kind of the ideas behind it. And again, I needed to get my hands on that as soon as I could. So without further ado, let's go to the conversation with Beth Stafford. All right, so I am here with Beth Stafford, right?
Yes.
All right, Beth, what is, well, you know what, before I dive into that, let's see here. Let's talk about the project in question for me. It is called...
Chin Up Chinchilla.
All right, Chin Up Chinchilla. So tell us, briefly about Chin Up Chinchilla.
Chin Up Chinchilla is a children's book that I wrote and partnered with Jeremy Slagle, and he illustrated it for me. And it's a story about a sad chinchilla, and a little hedgehog encounters him and begins to wonder, why might this chinchilla be sad? And so the storyline is really about empathy, about a character who sees someone else as sad, and they start to think about all the reasons why they could be. And it's really just a tool for kids to learn in a fun way about empathy.
That's so cool. A little disclaimer here. I read this book to my kids at least once every couple of weeks. It goes in little spurts. Sometimes I want to read it every night. Whenever I went to your guys' book reading, came away with those little sketchbooks. My son loves this little Chin Up Chinchilla sketchbook.
That's awesome.
And I don't know, the story is so much fun for them. I will say though that they do not like the part with the monsters under the bed.
That's funny. We had some people review the book before we published it officially. There was one lady who was like, I don't think you should do that. And we're like, well, No,
I think it's fun.
It's tough. We didn't know if kids really would be afraid of that, but it does give parents an opportunity to talk about it, and that's a real thing kids get sad about.
I think that's a key word that you've really, kind of taken control of, is this idea of opportunity. And before we kind of go a little bit farther into the book, let's kind of back up to, I guess, the moment you decided, hey, this needs to be a book.
Yeah. So it all came about because I have a daughter, and she's 5 now, but at the time she was about 3. And we would notice that when she'd watch TV, she would get real concerned about characters, or if like one of us was not feeling well, she would show concern. And so my husband and I had a conversation about how can we encourage this trait in her, because we love it and we want it to continue to grow. And so I said, wouldn't it be awesome to write a kid's book, something that you could use that for not just our kids, but a lot of kids. And we had that conversation one night. He went to bed, and then this story just like appeared in my mind. And so it was one of those things that I just couldn't ignore it. So I just started to write it down. And by the time I was finished, I thought, this is an actual story. So the next morning when we woke up, I was like, I wrote that book last night. Here, can I read it to you? And that's pretty much how it happened, which seems like cheating in a way, because some people set out and think, I want to write a children's book. And so they sit down and they really think about it. But it was almost like the story was given to me as a gift, you know, like,
yeah.
I don't know. But
this little humming started. Look, can you just put the little thing in there? I'm sorry.
You're fine.
All right, and we're back. Okay, so you're kind of talking a little bit more about this idea of, so you wrote the whole thing. You wrote it in a night,
Yes,
right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
With a few tweaks after that, once I had people like, officially review it, and we started thinking about some scenarios, illustrating certain things would be too much of a challenge or might not translate well for a kid to understand. And so there were maybe 2 or 3 lines that changed, but essentially it stayed the same.
Yeah. So how long ago was this moment right here?
I think it was a little over 2 years ago.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Huh. So, kind of going forward with this idea, like, did you know, like, after that first night of writing it, like, this is going to be a book? Or does this just kind of, or was it one of these things where you're like, maybe it will, maybe it won't?
Yeah, it was maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I knew that I had something that at least I would want to create for myself, because I felt like it was actually a really good story. But then when I would share it with people and see their reactions of, oh yes, like this has to be a book, then it became something that was validated by other people than just me. And so I felt like that gave me more motivation to actually see it come to light where other people could enjoy the book too, instead of just me.
Yeah. So going forward from there, your husband is a very talented illustrator.
He is.
And he did not
illustrate the book, no. So it started out where he was going to, and he had never illustrated a children's book before. He illustrates other things. And so he would try some sketches, and I'd be like, yeah, I think that's great. And he would be like, I don't know. There was just something that he wasn't satisfied with it. And then he would say, I think I found it. I think I've got the chinchilla. And he would draw it, and I'd be like, that's just not really what I had in mind, which you tread lightly because I really appreciated his help. But, it was just a back and forth. And eventually it got to the point where I would say, what do you think about the book? And he'd say, you know what, I feel like I'm holding you back because I am not comfortable where I'm at with it. So he basically said, I want you to make the book and don't feel like you have to wait for me to do it. So he gave me, not that I needed his permission, but he generously said, don't let me hold it up just because I feel like I can't get where I would want to be with it.
Yeah.
And we both love children's books, and I think that's a struggle because we see how well it can be done.
Yeah.
And so we're holding ourselves to this really high standard of awesomeness,
So then, kind of going forward, what do you do?
Wait a long time. It felt like I was just waiting. And I think my plan in my head was that I can either illustrate this in a mediocre way and print one book and have it on my shelf at home, or I can wait and save money and contact an illustrator someday and try to make things happen that way. So that was just kind of where I left it. Like, maybe someday I will be able to hire somebody and we can partner on this book together.
Yeah. So then the day came where you found Jeremy Slagle.
Yes. We had actually done a podcast with him, and we were talking about a lot of random things, and at lunch he brought up the fact that he had always wanted to illustrate a children's book, that was something he was really interested in. And I sat there and I looked at Ben, and then I looked at Jeremy, and I said, would you want to illustrate my book, which is funny because in that moment afterwards, talking to Jeremy, he thought that Ben and I had already talked about asking him, but it was just in the spur of the moment. I just thought, here's a person who says that they're really interested in doing this, and I know how talented he is. That would be amazing. So we left that conversation as let me know if you'd really be interested, and then we can talk about the details. And that's where we left it. And then a few days later, he got back to us and said, yeah, I'm really interested in doing this book.
That's really cool. So you decide to, or you guys both decided that you're going to work together.
Yes.
At this point, is the story done? And
yes, the story was
ready,
done.
ready to illustrate. So you just hand it over to him, and then you're like, here you go. And then like, that's that?
Kind of. I mean, because I am a creative, I definitely have opinions on how things look, but I also respect other creatives who do a good job. So I wasn't set out to micromanage everything that he did. I had gathered some inspiration of things that I liked and thought was great, and he was definitely open to feedback. So I sent him mood boards of my inspiration along with the copy, and then he came back with some sketches, and really it was awesome right away. Just a few minor things that we tweaked here and there to make it even better, and he was really receptive to that feedback too. So I feel like as much as I could, I tried to let go of that aspect because I just knew he was going to knock it out of the park.
Yeah. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your background to kind of how this came into be a book.
So I am a graphic designer. That's my job. But I've always loved to write for fun. As a kid, I loved doing it. I would write short stories. In high school and junior high, I did some competitions. Like, I just did it for fun, and I've always enjoyed it. So I think I probably would have liked to do a children's book sometime, but I never really set out to do it, I guess. But it just kind of all came together with this one book. And since I wrote that book, I've done 2 more in the same series. So, yes, I'm very excited about what is to come. Yeah.
I always think that's really interesting about certain people. Like, okay, so there's people that like go to like business school and they're like, I'm going to start a business, but they never have like any idea what that business is going to be. But then like, I think the special thing about creative personalities is that they don't really set out to create anything specifically. Like it always starts from that need or that idea of like I don't know. I guess it could have been anything. Like, it didn't have to be a book, but you decided like this is the best way to communicate this to my kid. So that's the route that you decided to take.
Right.
And I don't know. I always think that's pretty incredible to kind of think about. And so with you. With this background here, and you said that you've already written more of this story. I guess before we kind of go that far, how did you decide to get these things made?
Well, we talked to as many people as we could about their experience in publishing, and we talked to people who have done it a traditional route, but we knew we'd have to get an agent really to get in front of the people we need to get in front of, and we might not have as much say over the creative or the direction of the story and different things. And so we had talked with some friends of ours who had gone through Kickstarter to launch their book that they made, and we thought really this is probably the most realistic way for us to get this into the hands of people and to do it without going too far out of our expertise, because Jeremy and I love what we did for this book, but we also are not doing this as a full-time job. So I'm still doing graphic design work, and so is he. And so we knew that it couldn't be something that completely consumed our lives. So after talking to people who had done Kickstarter, we thought, yeah, this is really the most logical route for us to go, because the story is written, we have the skills to produce it with our graphic design background, and so that's what we decided to do.
Yeah, and so you guys also decided to make the entire thing like completed before you even put it on there. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So quick story. I don't know if you know this one or not. I was walking in Easton Mall area looking for a brand new hat, and ran into Jeremy. He was just sitting there at a little coffee shop, and he's just doing something. And I like walk over to him and I'm like, what are you doing? Expecting him to say like he's working on like some big like brand logo type thing. And he's like, working on a kid's book. I'm like, oh, cool. That was whenever I first learned about what you guys are doing. And he was showing me some of the stuff and I was like, this is incredible. From that moment right there, I was like, this is going to be really cool. Mm-hmm. So you going through with the Kickstarter, how long ago did you launch that? Was that last summer?
It was last fall. We launched it in August. It ran for 30 days. And our goal was to get it wrapped up in time to get the books ordered, delivered, and sent out for Christmas.
Yeah. So the goal that you chose, that the amount of money, was that the bare minimum? Just to kind of get
Yeah,
things
we weren't
out.
trying to make anything, as a profit. We just knew exactly how much it cost to print, how much it would cost to do the rewards. So we figured that all out and we said, okay, we feel like this is going to be a real challenge to even get this amount of money, so we're just going to keep it as low as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after 30 days.
Yeah, we reached our goal in 5 days.
Nice.
So we were totally shocked by that. I mean, we thought we were going to have to invest our own money, a lot of it, and, just to get it passed. But yeah, after 30 days, we raised, our goal was $7,500 and we raised over $10,000. Nice. So we were able to order more books, and that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So were you able to get them out in time for Christmas?
Yes, surprisingly. We had to rush the delivery because they came from China, and so it was a little nerve-wracking, but yes, they came in time for Christmas.
Yeah. So what's been the life of Chin Up Chinchilla since you sent out that first batch?
Yes, it has been awesome to see people we know and their kids, but also people we don't even know at all who have received this book as a gift, or some people found us on Kickstarter and didn't know anyone connected to us. And to see them posting things online and tagging us about how their kids love it, or we received messages from people talking about how this connects with their kid who has autism. And that's amazing to me because that's not why I wrote it, but just knowing how it's a way to connect, like, how do you understand someone else's feelings by looking at them, which is not something that comes natural to everybody. It just blows me away that once you let something out into the world, it kind of takes on a life of its own and it impacts people in ways that you couldn't have anticipated.
So hearing that feedback from people, I don't know, was that kind of your cue to kind of, let's keep going with this, and I guess, you know what, let's start there. Let's answer that question.
Well, I had already written the other two stories even before we illustrated this one. I did them all around the same time. And they're all about empathy. So I think this one was the one that was the most solid. But yes, hearing people say, this is actually a great resource, I can't wait to share this in my classroom, or this is going in our library, or all these examples of how people were going to use this as a tool, it really did give me motivation to think, okay, if people like this, and often they would say, oh, please do more. Then I felt like, well, these people who are saying this don't owe me anything. It's not like my mom who, thinks I'm great no matter what I do. But these are people who genuinely like the message of the story. So I thought, yes, if we could continue making these and give people more resources, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah. I guess I just want to talk for a second about like just how kids like respond to books. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's this really weird thing. I guess when you read to them every day, my kids are crazy. Like they're just bouncing off the couches and all that stuff. But when it's time for bed, they just calm down, and like the book is the thing that kind of does it for them.
Right.
And I don't know, like nothing gets them to pay attention more. And whenever you have that opportunity to, there's that word again, opportunity, right? Like to tell them something meaningful and not just like another story.
Right.
But also, I mean, what you've done was you've done it in just a fun way that kids don't, I don't think kids like are thinking about that like off the top of their heads, but like they're just thinking, oh, this little chinchilla is having like the horrible day.
Right.
Like they think about that stuff, but then like, I'm sure they're able to piece it together at a certain age anyway.
Right.
And I think it's an amazing idea that you had.
Thank you.
I think it's super cool. Anyway, so enough about you. No, I'm just kidding. So you have these other stories written and you're kind of ready to go with them, right?
Yes.
Is Jeremy designing them right now?
He is working on the second one, yes. Yeah.
So, good.
Yeah, if you want me to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about those. So all the books are about empathy. So the first book is about empathy when you see someone who's sad and how can you relate to those feelings. But the second one is how do you relate to somebody who is experiencing a win, maybe when you are not. And I think sometimes that's actually harder. It's easier to look at someone who's sad and feel that sympathy. But when someone gets something that you don't have, or you see them win and you're not the winner, there can be other feelings that are competing there, of jealousy. And so that second book is how do you help someone celebrate, which I think will be a really great thing.
Yeah.
And then the third book is how do you relate to somebody when they're angry? Because I think a lot of times you see someone who's angry and you don't really think about all the reasons behind that anger, and you might take offense to it in ways that you don't need to. So
That's incredible. I don't know. That's super cool. Do you think that you'll do Kickstarter for those as well?
I think we probably will. I mean, ideally, if a literary agent is listening to this right now, it'd be great for someone else to take on some of that responsibility. The legwork is a lot of work. But I think we did such a great job at being able to reach a lot of people that way. I think that the same people who supported us in the first book, I think a lot of them would be still interested. So I think we've already kind of built a platform there that we can use it if we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of backing up a little bit here. This is like literally what I do. I just go all over the timeline and just like cut it as I need to. I guess was there anything that you found to not work very well, like during this whole process? Like any big problems that you kind of ran into?
I talked to you about this during the campaign. Advertising was just a totally foreign thing to me from like an analytics standpoint and figuring out how to reach target markets. And that stuff is just not in my wheelhouse. Yep. So I felt really overwhelmed by that. I know why people pay other people lots of money to do it. And because for us, we reached our goal, there wasn't really any reason to put that much effort into it,
Yeah.
I think I was surprised by how much effort it does take to run a Kickstarter campaign. Like, I thought once I did all the work ahead of time when we launched, it would be smooth sailing, but really it's like every single day you need to be posting something or interacting with people or updating things. And so it's not that it didn't go well, I just think it was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And it is one of those things where like once you start going down it, you kind of like have to do everything,
Yes.
I mean, in my experience, that's the way it was, where it's like, oh no, like, I wasn't ready for this. Like, you can spend as much time as you want being prepared, but then like once it's there, you're just like, I got to get more attention for this thing, or like, got to do something, One of the things that I was doing was trying to get, send out like press releases and stuff like that. And it's just like, I really don't like press releases.
Right.
Like, I just cannot relate to those in any way.
Right.
I don't enjoy them. I don't understand how anybody else does either. So honestly, what I ended up doing was just writing a simple message and like sending that off, and a few people ended up posting about it. But
right, that is something. Like, I thought there would be a lot of avenues of people who would want to talk about the story. Mm-hmm. But when you're posting something to Kickstarter, I think a lot of people get contacted to share people's campaigns, and so they're not interested in doing it. So unless they know you personally, they don't really have a desire to help you. So I think I was banking on a lot of people to help spread the word, and I didn't get any bites,
Yep.
But the few people who did really made a big difference. So it evened out. But at the time, I had thought, oh yeah, for sure, like these people who read books, they'll want to review my book. But it didn't exist yet, so no, they're not interested. And it was just learning to let go of some of those ideas I had.
Yeah. So whenever I started, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna make it so like 20 of the people that are closest to me will buy one. And I don't think that there may have been like 10 or 15, but then there was like a bunch of other people from like out of the country and all this stuff, which is actually kind of more validating than having just your friends, like sort of like you were saying. Unless it was all just my mom and she got them delivered all over the world. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm gonna call her after this.
She loves you that much.
Let's see what I got here. I guess like at what moment did you think that this would be something special? If maybe you don't but maybe you do. But was there a single moment where you're like, you know what, this is going to be something good?
I think it sounds kind of crazy to say this, but I think that actually the night I wrote it, I thought, this is actually legit. Like,
yeah.
It rhymes, which I love books that rhyme. They're so much easier to say.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
Yep.
It checked off a lot of boxes for me as far as what I enjoy reading to my kid.
Yeah.
And I would get kind of teary-eyed when I would read it to people sometimes, because in my mind, as I read it, I was thinking about the reality of the scenarios that I was reading. Like, maybe a monster is under his bed, is one of the scenarios, but maybe it's something somebody said. Like, that's a heavy thing. Like, little kids and adults get really sad because people say things to them that's hurtful. So, like, even now my eyes get teary-eyed because I just think about that being a reality. And I think that's what we tried to do in the book when I wrote it. Not just have all one type of scenario. Like, have a scenario where has physical harm, because that could make you sad. Disappointment, being scared, being lonely, being hurt, by something someone says. So I tried to incorporate enough scenarios there that it's relatable no matter who you are. And so I just think after I wrote the book, I thought, I think this is like a real book. And it kind of just surprised me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did it feel reading it to your daughter for the first time?
It was very fun. And it's funny because the few lines that changed in the book, she would get upset because she had memorized the book from me reading it to her. And so when we got the physical book, she would continue to want to say the scenarios that were no longer
Let's send it back to China.
Yeah, it's very funny. But now she's used to it, but she likes it. And if she sees other kids with it or someone brings it up, she goes, that's my mommy's book. It's just very cute to see her. And I dedicated the book to her. So, because she really is the reason why I wrote it. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I guess to kind of wrap this up, you know what, actually, let me ask this question. And maybe you started talking about it a little bit before, but like, how are things different for you personally now after publishing this book?
I feel like I have this great opportunity to talk to people about something that really matters to me. And it's funny because when I was in college, I remember a lot of people talking about things that they were passionate about, and me just feeling like, I don't really know if I have a passion to do the same things that other people are doing. But this book, I've realized, has opened up a new opportunity for me to be able to talk about just being kind to people, caring about people, loving people, to be able to do that with kids and their parents. And like, I'll be going to my hometown to read this book to kids in my elementary school next week. I'm super excited about that because I'm just thinking about all the kids who are going to hear this message. I don't know how many of them will change the way they live based on it, but if one kid is kinder to another kid, that's awesome. So I think my life has changed. It's become richer. Like, I can share this really cool thing that I did with the world, where most of the stuff I do is just for me, or I'll do stuff for clients, but it doesn't really get out there too far. So I just feel like it's opened up a wonderful opportunity for me to talk about kindness and empathy.
Yeah. That's really great. So where can people learn more about Chin Up Chinchilla?
You can find it online at happycargobooks.com, and we sell it mainly through our site, and we are also on Instagram under Happy Cargo Books.
Awesome. All right. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, but thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. This is good. All right. So, that was an amazing conversation. Actually, I really wish I left this thing recording because we dove a little bit deeper into some more of the meaning of what Chin Up Chinchilla is. On the surface, it is a fun kids book, but the ideas behind it and the ideas that Beth had, and learning more about some of the things that are behind the parents that are reading this to their kids. It's such a powerful thing to be able to tell stories this way to children. Little things that are impossible to get their attention sometimes. Anytime you're able to grab their attention and tell them an incredible story that has real meaning is I don't know, just a really powerful and special thing that we probably don't have enough of in this world. And I guess as my recap, a few insights, I guess, that I captured from this. I guess the biggest one is going to be, letting your passion decide where your path takes you. That sounds like a poster, doesn't it? But anyway, getting really excited about something, letting yourself get really excited about it, and letting yourself dive deep into something. It doesn't necessarily have to turn out to be a Kickstarter campaign and end up to be a book. It could be something much smaller, but at the same time, that's some of the most rewarding stuff in a creative life, I believe, is when you are able to align your passion and something that you want to exist in the world with your skill set, really. I think the next insight isn't so much a creative one, but it's really just, I guess, an observation where everybody's going through something. It sounds like a different kind of podcast now. Everybody's going through something, and I think that, as a person, you should always, I don't know, I guess, have empathy of any situation that people are going through, whether that is grief, happiness. Empathy works with all emotions, and I think that making sure you take the time to try to understand how other people feel about certain things that maybe you said or maybe somebody else said or did, and taking the time to, I guess, care for them, So on that note, that's all I got. This was an incredible interview with Beth, and hope you liked it. If you did, you can subscribe to one of many different places: iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast. I think that's a thing. And Spotify. Yeah, we're on Spotify now. So subscribe, and whenever these things are released, you should get some sort of notification or something. I don't really know. Cool. All right. Bye.